a group of South African doctors has launched an urgent court application. They are seeking easier access to ivermectin. SAHPRA, the regulator, intends to oppose the application set down for the 22nd of February in the High Court in Pretoria. Well, let's discuss this matter now. I'm joined by one of those doctors, Dr. Nasiba Kathrada, who can tell us a little bit more. She's from the I Can Make a Difference organization. Dr. Kathrada, good morning, and thank you very much for your time. Can we just start first by getting clarity?
Okay, so to get started, today we are very fortunate to be sitting with Dr. Kat, very well known, especially recently with interviews on the news about COVID-19, her views on that, her letters to the president, very interesting, and also about how she's gotten involved with the unrest that's taken place over the last couple of weeks now in KZN, which has slightly simmered down. So, if we can start, Dr. Kat, if you could please just introduce yourself to the audience, tell us a little bit about yourself, what it is that you do, and how you are involved with the community.
Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Dr. Nasiba Kathrada, also known as Dr. Kat. I'm a medical doctor. I decided to confine my practice to weight loss, so I generally specialize in weight loss, so I don't see sick people, I see fat people. Right. So I run an aesthetic practice in Westville in Durban, where I do my own eating plan, I've got my own range of supplements, and I also do aqua liposuction. Okay. So during the lockdown, the first lockdown, which was lockdown 5, where it was just essential workers only, we were shut down for about 9 weeks, we closed. And that was when I got involved in the COVID pandemic, because I was part of a Doctors on Call helpline, where we were doing a voluntary service, taking calls. I mean, this pandemic was unprecedented. None of us had been through it before, so we were literally building the plane and flying it at the same time. And somebody, came up with the idea of doing a helpline where people would just call a toll-free number and we would be able to help them. And we were just as volunteers taking these calls. All they would call and ask us, how must they isolate if one person tested positive? So there's a lot of rules and following rules. And I found that there was a lot of communication, but there was very little comprehension. And then you could see that by the time the message filtered down from the Department of Health, not only it was difficult to get the message across to the general public, the general feeling of fear was always there, anxiety was always there. But what to do about it was always lagging behind. And what I found was that for the first time, doctors were literally stuck in a zone that they were not before. Because generally, if I see a patient and it's out of my depth where the person needs to be investigated, I would refer to a physician. They'd go to hospital, they'd get investigated. Physician would manage, and then we move in a hierarchy. Suddenly, our hospitals were full. There weren't enough beds, and there was not any direction that was coming from the government as to how to treat the patient. Right. We knew social distancing, isolate, sanitize, and then it was isolate if you're sick. And then suddenly when you blew in the face, go to hospital. But then there's no beds in the hospital. And there was never, and up until now, there isn't that push for training or teaching doctors how to manage a patient with COVID. The push is vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. And it went from wear masks, sanitize, social distancing, isolate, vaccine. And there's this big gap. So I created a WhatsApp group of doctors around the country, mostly in KZN, but we've had people from all around the country. Somebody would ask a question, I need a patient, bed for a patient in this area, then we would hook them up the right place. I've got a patient with SAPS of this, what must I do now? Where can I get a pulse oximeter? Where can I get a mask? So that was basically the group that I created. And throughout that time, I could see that people were trying different things. So some people were using steroids, some people were not, some people were using aspirin, some people were not. There was a different choice of antibiotics, which is fair because doctors will treat according to the patient in front of them. And then in December, SAHPRA announced that ivermectin was banned. And I was like, I've been working on this for so many months, and I'm quite sure there's a lot of doctors using ivermectin. And that's when I started doing my research on ivermectin, and that's when I wrote that letter to the president. So that's basically the overview of who I am and where I am in this pandemic.
Tell us a little bit about why you were interviewed and what your discussion was. What was your stance on what was happening?
Okay, so what happened was it was in January, and a friend of mine had called me hysterical on the phone, And she had an aunt that was very close to her that was taken to one of the hospitals during the peak in the second wave here in KZN in Durban. And I remember having a discussion with her over the previous 2 weeks, and we were trying to get ivermectin to her aunt, but because it was illegal, the aunt refused to take it, even though they could get it on the black market. She said, I'm not taking the ivermectin because it's illegal. And then we kept insisting that she goes to hospital. And I kept telling my friend, she needs to go to hospital. She's got comorbidities. Her sats are dropping. She needs to go to hospital. And then she kept saying, I don't want to go to hospital because if I go to hospital, I'm going to die. So on that particular morning, I had a patient that I was consulting with. He said to me, Dr. Kat, I'm really sorry I'm late, but we heard ambulances coming to our apartment in Durban, and we thought, as usual, it was another COVID patient, but it wasn't. It was a very good friend of mine. Her 12-year-old son jumped from the 12th floor and committed suicide. And we had a little chat about that. It was part of the repercussion of COVID because he was not at school. He was no socializing with friends. She jumped, and that was really affected me a lot because I've always spoken about the ripple effects of the pandemic and not just people who are dying from COVID, but what else is happening. And after she told me that, I got this a phone call from my friend, and I was trying to get hold of the hospital. And I remember the nurse eventually helped me, and she said, Dr. Kathrada, we know the patient you're referring to. She said she came in on oxygen sats of 37%. They put her on oxygen for 7 minutes, and then she demised. So I have to now phone my friend and tell her the news that the same aunt that refused to take ivermectin because it was illegal, the same aunt who said, when I go to hospital, I'm going to die, ended up in hospital and died. It was heartbreaking for me, especially with the other story that happened the same day. And then the next morning, I woke up to the news that we had reached the highest number of deaths per day in KZN, I think in South Africa on that day. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. We're already almost a year into the pandemic. Surely by now, the government should give us some direction about treatment. And why are they withholding ivermectin? And that's when I wrote the letter to the president. And I wrote it for myself. And I wrote it just to feel like I was doing something. And I said, dear Mr. President, give hope back to the people and give trust back to the doctors. So if we as doctors think that the patient will do well from ivermectin, give us the chance to use it. And the hope will be back there. So like my friend was saying, I wish we could have tried the ivermectin, I wish. And she couldn't because it was illegal. When I wrote that letter, I was rushing off to theatre like I'm still in my strap. So I was rushing off to theatre, and I quickly posted it on one of the groups, like I told you, the home management team group. And I said, hey guys, I'm writing this letter to the president. If anybody wants to just put their name at the bottom, please feel free. And I go to theatre and I come back, and then there's these messages from all over saying, please, Dr. Kat, don't send it yet. I want to add my name. I've got friends in PE who want to add their name. My sentiments exactly. You've got so much of courage to write this. This is how we all feeling. And then within 2 or 3 days, I had over 700 people, doctors and healthcare workers who subscribed to the same feelings, and they wanted to be part of it. And that letter went viral on social media, and I started getting a lot of phone calls from people all around the country, news media houses, etc., asking me as to why I wrote it. And it made me realize then that, we were also sort of lost, and everybody was feeling the same thing, but everybody was scared, not only scared of the virus or scared of the pandemic, but scared to talk about it. And when I started being vocalized about it, because I am quite passionate, and a lot of people were like, that's exactly how we're feeling. And then I started working on the ivermectin case. We started a group, and we took SAHPRA and the Department of Health to court to make ivermectin accessible to the general public, not at a bus stop dishing it out like Smarties, but we were giving it out under the supervision of a doctor, because as more data came out, we knew now that ivermectin was weight dependent. We knew that you give it at a different dose depending on the stage of the illness. If it's for prophylaxis, it's a specific dose. If it's for early treatment, it's a specific dose. If it's for late treatment, it's a specific dose. And we were trying to promote that you don't just take it off the black market, you take it correctly under the supervision of your doctor. And we were working really hard on that. And then, alhamdulillah, we won our case. And so ivermectin is now legally available in South Africa via a compounding pharmacy or via a pharmacy that has a Section 21 bulk application approval. The doctor just has to script ivermectin and you can get it.
Okay, so my next question is, well over a year now into COVID-19 and into the lockdown, what is your take in terms of what's changed and improved since things were crazy last year? So how have things gotten better at this point, if anything at all?
So the one thing that I've seen is there are a group of people who are willing to work together. They are willing to work together and, come up with solutions, and we discuss patients on a regular basis. And the one thing that's sad is that we are very polarized. So that I've seen and that I've noticed is that as the pandemic was going on, as opposed to coming together and all fighting for the same thing, which is to save people's lives, people have jumped on different bandwagons to say this is the best thing and that is the best thing. As opposed to having a collaboration and cooperation, it's more polarization to say, I'm using steroids on day one. No, you shouldn't be using steroids on day one. I'm using ivermectin. No, ivermectin doesn't work. And as opposed to tolerating each other and working together, there's a lot of polarization, and that really, really saddens me, because the one thing that I wrote in all of my poems, I've sent you a few, it's also on my Facebook page, I kept saying that when we are in a state of war, the one thing that is unanimous and universal is that the way you win any war is by dividing and conquering. And that division, we see it from the general public right through to the experts, with doctors as a big chunk in between. And if the doctors cannot agree, if the experts cannot agree, we are divided so much that is the entire motive. And what I'm saying is division is not the same as having a difference of opinion.
Wow.
So if, for example, you like red and I like black, that doesn't mean that I'm on opposite ends from you. I will just respect your decision to like red and I like black. So we will agree to disagree with dignity, but we've stopped doing that. And the other thing that I found is in search for knowledge, there's a song by UB40 says, the more I learn, the less I know. And I keep thinking that because, in South Africa, we have such a strong constitution. We are a third world country with a constitution of a first world, but the knowledge is not there in the public. There are many lawyers, in fact, lots of doctors who don't know their rights. There's general public who don't know their rights. I mean, if you want to take ivermectin, it is your right. It is there on the patient charter that the doctor can take informed consent for off-label, but it is your right to use it. But there isn't anybody with a strong enough voice to say, I want to use ivermectin, you will give it to me now, or I'm taking you to court. It's happened around the world. Here in South Africa, our constitution protects us as people. It protects us with our right. It's my body, it's my right to do what I want. We get a lot of coercion, we get a lot of misinformation, and people need to just go back to the basics and know your rights. And if you learn that, and if we can start spreading the word as to this is my right, I'm allowed to do this, freedom of speech, it's informed consent, this is my right, no one can force me to take the vaccine, no one can force me to take ivermectin, no one can force me not to take ivermectin, no one can force me to take a steroid, know your rights. We can start moving in the same direction, because that will also tie in with the fact that it's your right to do what you want, it's the right to do what I want, but I'm going to respect your right and I'm going to respect your opinion.
Very well said. Very, very well said. Very interesting. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay,
I should run for president.
You should! You should!
I should. I get that all the time. I'm not for president. If you promise to vote for me, I'll consider.
We're on camera now. Right? We're on camera now. But we'll talk about that separately. All right, so on a slightly different topic now, we also saw on your social media platforms, which we'll get to in a while, some videos and some work that you did in KZN with some of the unrest. Last time we spoke, you told us a little bit about Servolution. So tell us, just briefly touch on that a bit, and then also tell us, where is Servolution going from now?
Right. So during the pandemic, Sunday night was not so bad. After the president spoke, it went really bad. Monday was terrible here in KZN. So that was 2 Mondays ago. They actually call it Black Monday now. And Tuesday morning, it was about 2 or 3 in the morning, I could hear gunshots from my bed. My kids were totally afraid. Our community has started, we normally have a CPF, but they were putting up patrols. We knew about burning and the looting. And then I was like, you know what, I need to write another letter to the president. In fact, somebody messaged me, one of the doctors in the groups, like, please can you write another letter to the president? She could hear gunshots, and thus I'm writing a letter to the president. And as I was writing the letter, asking the president, it was a plea for help again. Like the last time, remember I said,
Yes.
I'm asking for hope. So this time as I was writing, I'm thinking, what the hell? We are all here. We are so unsafe. Where's the president? He knew full well that when Jacob Zuma was arrested, there's going to be some unrest. And if you are really there for your people, he should have had contingency plans in place. The minute the first looting happened, they should have been here. The cops should have been there, SNDF, but nobody was there. And who was there? Our community was there. When I wrote this letter, it was touching on what we said about the pandemic. It was absolutely clear cut to me that when we stand together as a people, we can achieve anything. There are certain places in KZN now that are cleaner now than they were before the looting. Because people came together as communities, we worked as one. Regardless of our backgrounds, regardless of our differences, our aim was to safeguard our families. And when I wrote that letter, of course, that one went viral as well. And one of the gentlemen who knew me from the ivermectin saga sent me a message to say, you know, we're not in KZN, but we can see what's going on there, and we are grouped in Gauteng, and we'd like to help in any way that we can. And they contacted the Pretoria, I think it's one farmers market, and there were a whole lot of farmers that wanted to give some fresh produce because they knew that not only were the shops looted, the warehouses were also looted. So getting food into KZN initially was going to be difficult. So that's how I got in touch with Daryl from Servolution. And it's exactly a week later on the Monday, after Black Monday, we had 15 or 16 vehicles where farmers from Pretoria and Gauteng drove down to Durban. They came with their families, they came with their children, and they came with bucky loads of just fresh produce. And they came with 60,000 seedlings. And the point of them coming down to give this to us personally was to say that we are there for you. We work as a community, as a country, and to give hope back to humanity. And that was the Servolution philosophy, where it's not a closed hand, where we fight revolution. It's an open hand with a heart, where we serve, we basically build up. We hand up, we don't hand down. And the seedlings, the initial thing was we needed to give the fresh produce. People were not being able to get onions and potatoes and tomatoes, so that's what we were giving out. But we were also trying to set up little spaza shops in areas that were looted really badly. So if we give them stock, they are able to sell to the communities, and then they can rebuild at least 1 or 2 businesses. So sometimes it's about 10 or 12 businesses that we were able to restart. And then with the seedlings that they brought, we actually went around to communities that were to build bridges. So if that community came and looted here, it doesn't matter. We knew that you were misinformed, ill-informed. Now you yourself who are looting, you don't have a job. Here, we're going to give you some seedlings, start planting in your community, and it's rebirth, it's regeneration, and it's regrowth, and it's building bridges. So they came again a week later, which was last weekend. They brought another 15 tons of fresh produce, and Sunday we got another 40,000 seedlings, which I just gave out the last bit today.
Stunning.
So I got involved in that as part of the community.
Stunning, absolutely stunning. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, so all of this in mind, my last question to you, Doc, because you're very involved, you're very active, you're very passionate, as you mentioned, with everything going on, COVID, the vaccines, ivermectin, the unrest that's happened now in KZN. From that perspective, what you've already spoken to us about the importance of knowing our rights, so that's one tip. But what other words of hope, words of motivation, or words of advice would you give from your perspective to the general public and to the people of South Africa with keeping all of these things in mind?
Well, I started my own channel, right? It's called Hello with Dr. Kat, and I'm definitely going to interview you next week because I want to know your perspective.
Okay.
And that is the last question I ask everybody. I always say, let's end up with a message of hope. And every person that I've spoken to usually tells me about one incident that happened where somebody you don't know, a neighbor or a friend, especially helped during the looting or during the part of the pandemic. And that gives me so much of hope, knowing that there are still people out there. And my message to the general public is, know your rights, know your neighbors, and when I say neighbors, I mean your general neighbors, and know that when you work together, you respect each other's opinion, you agree to disagree with dignity, we are able to achieve the impossible. Because Nelson Mandela also said, the impossible is only impossible if you don't try. And if we do it together, we can. And I have a philosophy that I live by, and I tell my kids all the time. I say, don't do your best. It's be better than your best. And if you think, I get people telling me on a daily basis, oh, I took the vaccine because I need to travel. And I go, where are you traveling to? The whole world is literally on fire. Once you take the vaccine, if you can't take it out. I'm not saying don't take the vaccine, but I'm saying, no, you're right. You make an informed decision. Whether it's about ivermectin, whether it's about the vaccine, or whether it's about anything that you're doing in general. We are in a stage now where we are in an age of so much of misinformation and disinformation. Our mainstream media is pushing an agenda which is so obvious. When you start advertising on a news channel, that's a bit scary. And remember, when you have half a cup of water, whether you look at it half a cup full or half a cup empty, it's only half a cup. So look at your half a cup, understand it, and then know what you can do with it. If you keep moaning about the half you don't have, that's what happens. If you don't think about it, why are there queues in certain places for ivermectin, and then other queues, people are waiting for ARVs? Look at what the people need, look at what the people want, and then make your decision about things and work together. Let's put down our egos, let's put down our differences, and know that we can agree to disagree with dignity. Let's change the polarization. Let's work together for one common cause, and that is to build a better world and to save people's lives.
It's so important for us to hear these kinds of stories. It's so important for us to be able to hear these kinds of perspectives. You're speaking about making informed decisions. So important, because we have this influx of information with different opinions and different perspectives. It's so important for us now more than in the past, because we have access to so much, to be very careful before we make a decision. Not to just jump into it because everybody's doing it, but to make those informed decisions. And I love what you are saying about working together. I love what you're saying about that, because what's happened over the last few weeks with the unrest in KZN has really made us as an organization understand that importance, that it's not just the NPOs and the organizations that work in communities that are responsible to carry out the work. It's all of us together that need to do it, because these organizations can only do so much. We need the communities to lock arms with, so that we can do much more and make a stronger impact. So I fully agree with you on those things. Absolutely stunningly said. On that note, Dr. Kat, thank you so much for sitting with us and having a chat and sharing your perspective, your insight.
Well, thank you so much. And remember what I said, you also have to come on my channel.
Yes.
Which is Hello with Dr. Kat.
Yes.
Because you also had an opportunity to see things from a different perspective, because
Yes.
you get to speak to so many people.
Exactly.
And exactly like we said, when I was doing the interviews with people, I interviewed my staff, and asking them certain questions which I wouldn't necessarily on a normal day made me learn things about them. And I was like, wow, if we just stop and listen.
Yes.
And that is why on my channel I say, I'm Dr. Kat and I'm listening.
So in closing, Doc, you mentioned your social media channels. Just mention them one more time for the viewers if they want to reach out to you.
Okay, so my company is called Dr. Katz. So if you search for Dr. Katz, K-A-T-S, for sugar, Dr. Katz, the Z is a sexologist. That's not me.
Okay.
Dr. Katz, you can find me on Facebook, on Instagram. And if you find my personal page, I'm reach max people on my personal page, so please don't send me an invite. But all my posts are public, so you are able to send me a message on Messenger. So it's just Nasiba Kathrada on Facebook, but Dr. Katz, you'll find me everywhere on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. So you send me a message if you want to reach out, whatever it is. If you have any questions, I will try my best to help.
Fantastic. Thank you.